Hey guys, so I posted a video a while ago showing me tearing down this Ford 300 block, and I said I was going to use it to design a Crossflow cylinder head. So this is just kind of a short video updating on the progress on that. I'll show you how I kind of got the dimensions off this and then even some 3D models. So we'll jump right into it. Basically, I took this and I cleaned it up a little bit, and then to get some rough dimensions, I've taped some pieces of paper together, spray painted the top black, and then laid those pieces of paper over it to get just kind of a general like stamp of what the top of the block looked like, so that I could know what the head needed to match. This block didn't come with a head, sadly, so we're just kind of using the block for the main mounting surface. And then that basically created this. So you can see spray painted block, and then I stamped it onto this paper. And then that allowed me to kind of rough out some dimensions. So for each of the, patterns here, I was able to kind of sketch up what exactly it would be, and then take some actual dimensions of each hole and cut out um, using a ruler and a caliper. And then I knew what the bore would be, and I could look up like the bore spacing, so I knew what that should be. And that pretty much was allowed me to throw together at least a design for what that would look like here. And this I used just to kind of make sure everything lined up. And obviously you can see I did the stamping one more time, adjusted some stuff, and tried to make sure everything was at least going to kind of match. There will be multiple mock-ups of this head, probably made out of foam, so that'll confirm things. But this is at least how I started, just so I had all the dimensions of what the head needed to mate to. Now I'm going to take you over to my computer and show you some of the models I was playing around with. So the first thing I did was just kind of look at some profile pictures of a cylinder head for the 300s, kind of figure out where everything was situated, how they did it. Obviously, you have intake and exhaust on the passenger side, and then spark plugs on the driver's side. Now, most of the reason they did that is because, well, I don't know that this is the reason, but I see that the reason they did that was a spark plug would go right here, and then the valves are each on this side, so intake and exhaust over here. And that allows for the push rods to come up through here. And so it makes it really hard if you've got to have push rods coming up through your cylinder head. There's not really room in between the push rods to put an intake runner. So that's pretty much going to be my hardest job, is trying to fit an intake runner through the push rods without interfering with them and with making sure there's enough material there. And then most likely the spark plug would be moved from the driver's side over to the uh, passenger side, like you would see, with the exhaust, like you'd see on most V8s. So I also took the drawings, dimensions that got, and I made this. It's just a super thin outline of what the surface of that block would look like. So I knew exactly what dimensions everything else needed to be based off of. I used that, combined it with a model of an LS3 head that I found, which, as far as I can tell, is relatively close to accurately sized. And I made this, which a lot of people have actually already made stuff like this. They chop two LS heads in half. Well, they cut 3 cylinders out of each, weld them together, and bolt them on to the Ford 300. So that's all well and good, but I wasn't really looking to do something like that. I really want to make, a more stock style head that sure would be a lot more expensive to make a cast product, but um, I don't know. I want to see if I can make it to where it might be able to use stock manifolds or something like that. We're still in the very early process, so you know we'll see where it goes. But I did realize that is probably doable, cutting those LS heads in half and using those. At the same time, what I realized was I could use a lot of the components from the LS head because those are not readily available, but pretty easily found in junkyards and also in aftermarkets. The Ford 300 stuff may be easy to find, but you know, probably twice or three times as many shops are going to sell stuff for LS motors. So if I design a new head, maybe I try to use valves or springs or rockers that are all LS components, just to make it a little bit easier to source those things, so that this new design doesn't require more expensive parts from a 300 or from a different Ford engine that's not as widely used as the LS heads. And then after that, I went over and I basically made a one-cylinder head. Just a head that maybe would work on one cylinder. Kind of got the head bolt holes there. This would be our exhaust runner right there. This is our intake right here, you can see. We've still got the holes going through for the push rods, and then we've got where our valves would sit, valves and valve springs. Now this is a super basic model. Obviously there's a lot that would need to be done to make this manufacturable, but this is just kind of how I started my whole process. I took that and I kind of expanded it through to make a larger head, but what I came to realize was probably the way this will be manufactured is using 2-inch thick foam extrusion, and then taking that and using a CNC machine to cut it down and do layer by layer, which is what you're going to see in this model. It's kind of the continuation of that one cylinder, except it's a portion right here that could be a piece of 2-inch foam, and then a portion up here that could be a piece of 2-inch foam. And that way, you could cut just 2 inches at a time and then glue them together, and then potentially use lost foam casting to maybe actually cast a head this size. CNC out of aluminum would be super expensive and not really doable. Casting isn't great because you need a mold, but if you do lost foam casting, you can kind of make these one-off parts. I just need the capability to melt that much aluminum. So not 100% sure on that, but that's kind of the route we're going, because I do know somebody who can cut out foam like this. And so at least we could, maybe at least use this method to mock up a head and have an idea of how it fits and what's going to interfere with things. So that's pretty much what this is right here. And then I was able to take that and a bunch of those LS components that I found modeled already and kind of throw together this super janky model right here. But here you can see I've even got I've got spark plugs in there, which the model didn't update correctly at some point, so there's not holes for the spark plugs. There's only half the valves in there. But you can see I'm kind of using those LS components to make sure as I go along, everything is going to hopefully line up how it's supposed to. There you go. There's going to be a lot more design into this. I've actually been taking a break from this for a while, so hopefully I can get back into it. Probably the next step would be maybe finalize a design that I at least want to test fit. Try to make sure all the bolts are going to work and that the valves might work and push rods. One of the other things I should mention is that the push rods will actually have to be up at an angle. The way the holes are here in the block to allow the push rod through, they're just too close. So in order to make room for an intake runner like I did, it's basically going to push those push rods up and away from the runner. In doing that, I think I was able to keep these under 10 degrees, 10, maybe 15 degrees. But it's not ideal, obviously, because it's not right in line with the push rod. And then the rocker also may or may not be taking the force right in line from the push rod. But I'm not super worried about that. Maybe somebody else can tell me if I need to be worried about that. Um, but yeah, pretty much that's where we're at with the design of the 300 head. I've actually tried to, start modeling some things up and see how this could all be put together. I'm using like exhaust spacing, intake spacing here would, or no, this is exhaust. Exhaust spacing here would theoretically match up with the typical manifolds, and then intake would as well. Now, obviously, on a 300, the manifolds are kind of intertwined. You need them both to bolt everything together. But I don't think that's anything that can't be solved with a mock intake manifold plate or something that I could get Senkatsun to make for me. That would just take up the extra gaps that the bolts, that are missing because the intake manifold's on the other side. Somebody also at one point brought up the fact that like if you use an Offenhauser intake manifold over here, the carburetor is actually going to be tilted backwards. It needs to be tilted forward. But again, I think that's something that a different adapter plate on top of the Offenhauser intake could easily fix that problem. So I'm not really too concerned about that stuff right now. Mostly what I'm worried about is, getting a intake and exhaust cut into it, and then potentially, I mean, I think the biggest problem is going to be water jackets, how I'm going to get this thing to cool. So that'll also be an interesting task. But that's where we're at for now. Thanks if you watched that whole video. I know I just did a lot of talking, but leave your comments. Let me know if you have any advice. Don't tell me it's impossible, because that's just going to make me want to do it more. Thanks for watching.